Welcome to another edition of Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck, Mike Grimm, along with Justin Gaard and the head coach PJ Fleck. And we're going to recap a little bit of the Saturday night game, and then it's Friday night football here for the coming week. Minnesota traveling to Maryland on Thursday, a game Friday night at 6:30. We'll greet you at 4:30 in the afternoon on the Gopher Radio Network. And Guardsy, good to see you. For those watching on social media, you're looking good in the Gopher hoodie.
I'm here, man. Yeah, Gopher Radio Network hoodie. It still fits even after the quarantine diet not going as well as it should. So I was just glad that all my Gopher stuff fit for the season. Because let's just say I didn't have the same type of training camp that even the team had. But I'm happy to be here, man. Yeah,
I could tell when you were roaming the first row of the bleachers, you needed a water break at the halfway point.
People kept telling me to sit down. I was in the way. I said, "Who's the sideline?" It's Guardsy. Oh, he looks terrible. Well, he's in row one now, so you're going to have to pay attention to him.
Yeah, it's all good. I haven't. The diet hasn't been the best for me either. Coach Fleck is always looking good. For those not watching but listening, he's wearing his new Nike pullover or a quarter zip, it looks like, with the Here logo. And the Here thing has been so good, and it's been so meaningful. I wanted to start there. We're going to talk Michigan. We'll talk Maryland and all of that. But I think one of the cool things that's starting to happen a little bit is in Minnesota, high school teams are starting to adopt the Here program, and players are wanting to wear the number 0, which Rashad Bateman and many players around the country have worn the number 0 now. It's the first year that's allowed, but Bateman certainly doing it to represent zero tolerance of racism. It's pretty provocative. Provocative is not the right word. It's proactive. It's using their voice, and it's meaningful and impactful.
Well, I think it's incredibly impactful, and this is what we want our student athletes to do with their voice. Change has to be able to happen. And for that to be able to happen, you have to listen, you have to have empathy, and then you have to have action. And this is the action that they wanted to be able to have. They wanted an educational system inside our program that teaches everyone inside our program about the history of racism. What does it look like? What does it mean? How can we be able to learn from our past to create our future? Not only that, be able to spread this initiative amongst our state of Minnesota and the Twin City area to make sure that everyone has a zero tolerance for racism, especially in the state of Minnesota and around the country. And I'm really proud of our players for using their platform and their voice to be heard.
For those of us, we were on the air, Coach, for the pregame show, but I know that there was a video that played at TCF Bank Stadium before the game, and the entire team was lined up there on the sideline. Can you, for those that weren't at the game either, because there was only about 500 or so there, take us through what that moment was all about?
Yeah, our players also said, we wanted to be able to represent a lot of the African-American student athletes that maybe don't get some of the notoriety that they have, that they deserved over the course of the years, or haven't been able to. Maybe some people don't remember their names. And so this was all about the name campaign of a lot of our former student athletes, just from every sport. And so there's a little bit of a highlight tape of those student athletes from any sport across the board. And our team was interlocked, arm in arm, on the sideline with our helmets in front of us, watching this video. Multiple student athletes spoke during the video. It's about 90-second video to 2-minute video, not that long, but very impactful, that talks about ending racism and the need for change.
This week, because of the times we're in, I know traditionally when you take the team to the Baltimore, D.C. area, as you do a lot, there you incorporate stuff outside of football. And I know you don't want to get too specific with what you were hoping or maybe still hoping to do, but in regard to the HERE program and in regard to Washington, D.C., and we're close to Election Day, I know that at least internally you're doing a few things here this week to help non-football stuff. I mean, we're talking just education and the value of that.
Yeah, one of our first HERE talks was about the March on Washington, and not just about what we learned in our textbook with Martin Luther King Jr., and everybody knows that, and the I Have a Dream speech, but it was also a little bit more about a Philip Randolph and why the actual March on Washington happened, with so many decades of the actual economic equality not happening. Our players got a great education about that, about what that march was all about, and where that march took place. Last time we went to D.C., we went to the Lincoln Memorial, right, and looked over and saw where MLK's famous speech was and the March on Washington was. But with COVID right now, we want to take them to the Martin Luther King statue and to that one, but we're not sure what we can do with COVID rules just yet. and also 5 days prior to the election. You know, the biggest thing we want to do is keep our players safe. One, they've got to be able to go out there and play a game. We'll do everything within our power to make sure we can have an experience out there. But if not, we'll have the experience throughout the week as well with our Here initiative.
Last one for you on this, and I hit on it a little bit in the open, but we're starting to hear there are high school players in Minnesota that want to wear the number 0. Apparently now there are some teams that would like to have the Here logo put on helmets and those kind of things. I mean, that impact, you know, when this all unfolded and Coney Durr and your leadership group said, hey, education's the key to all of this, you know, you're basically, not quite even a month into it, and you're already seeing some impact and people taking note and making a difference.
Well, the biggest thing our players said is we just want to continue to keep this conversation going. Conversations lead to thoughts and ideas. It leads to empathy, and then it leads to action, right? So if we can constantly keep that talk going, I think that's critical, you know. And I think that's why when we went through this, and Here made sense because the ERE means end was before, and then Here with George Floyd, being here in the Twin City area, we felt like that was our way to be able to keep the conversation going, you know. And if somebody looked at our logo and said, "What's here?" It's a great way for us to be able to start the conversation. A lot of people know what the other, you know, the BLM movement and the BLM is, and they know that. And unfortunately, a lot of times, like everything in our society, it becomes very political very fast. And we want to continue to keep that conversation going in a very positive, connective way. And when you have something that somebody doesn't know about, they're more likely to ask. And so that's why the Here campaign, I think, is very powerful for our student athletes.
So as you went back and watched Michigan, Coach, was there anything that jumped out that maybe didn't hit you on Saturday night, or was it pretty much what you saw on tape was what you thought you saw in person there on Saturday?
It was pretty much what I thought. I thought we played extremely hard. We made probably 4 or 5 true big catastrophic mistakes on defense that led to some explosive plays. And then we had some things we normally don't do inside the 5, where we come away with only 3 points instead of 14 twice. But when you watch it, I mean, we're right there in the game. And the score, I don't think necessarily dictates how close that game really was. But we were constantly chasing and trying to make up for certain things. And we're not very good at that at times. And we obviously proved that on Saturday. But you got to give Michigan a lot of credit. They're a really good football team. That might be the top 2 best fronts I've ever played against as a head coach. The same with our team. They were extremely aggressive, very long, twitchy, and they played their hearts out. And they were really good. I mean, really good. Very disruptive. And you got to give them a lot of credit. Don Brown's defenses are always like that. They're very difficult to play against. We felt like we left a lot of meat on the bone in terms of points. But there were a lot of decisions we had to make, too, because of some of the situations we're in that made it a little bit maybe more complicated on our own, that maybe we wouldn't do. Maybe we put our own hand behind our back at times. But you got to give Michigan a lot of credit, no excuses whatsoever. I mean, they're a really good football team, and they beat us up.
What kind of things, and you talked in the pregame interview with us on the show, that you like the guys that are filling in for the guys who are now in the NFL, which we'll talk about later in the show because some of your guys had a big day on Sunday in the league. But you like them; they're talented, but you can't make up for not having played much. You had 2 guys starting on the ends, for example, who last year were basically pass rush specialists. Now they have other duties. They can't just pin their ears back, and a freshman linebacker and a redshirt freshman safety, and you can't make up for experience. So what do you think they learned, and how quickly now do they have to use that info to put it in place in a game?
Well, the great thing is they got to open up with one of the best teams in college football, and we got to find out exactly where we match up with the team who played really well. You know, Michigan did not beat themselves at all. They played pretty flawlessly, and we made too many mistakes. But if we don't make those mistakes, we're right inside the game just like anything else. I mean, we were able to move the football up and down the field when we had to. But again, we made too many mistakes. So I think that what they need to look at is why we made those mistakes, fix those mistakes, and really just let it loose. I think we had some new guys play a little hesitant. They wanted to be sure instead of just going. And that's natural for young players that get a chance to play early, or inexperienced players. But today's practice was really good. They're very open to getting better. They want to get better. And that's why I like this team so much, is because they really want to just get better every day.
I was curious, what types of mistakes did you see defensively? Because obviously, I think you said with Paul Allen earlier in the week, you have one guy out of place. That's what happens on a 70-yard run. And certainly we've seen that with younger players over the years, kind of going to the wrong spot, maybe not getting to the right spot quickly enough. But what types of mistakes did you see out there, especially when you watched it back?
Yeah, usually when there's big explosive plays like that, there's usually a mistake on defense, and we did. There wasn't a lot of them, but there were. And when there were catastrophic mistakes, and they led to big explosive plays. So basically, again, eyes in the wrong spot. Took the cheese, I would say, just a little bit, and then being able to really swarm and get people on the ground once people are already stopped. I think those were things on defense that we have to be able to get better at.
All right, very good. Let's take our first break. We'll continue to talk football here. We've got the Michigan game to put to bed. We'll look ahead to the Friday night game with Maryland as well, and a few other things. Onward for Business, presented by Sunbelt Business Advisors, wants you to be on their team when you buy or sell a business. Onward for Business is the one-stop shop for buying or selling your business and for payroll, insurance, bookkeeping, and more. Onward, Sunbelt Business Advisors, proud to sponsor Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck. It's Grimm and Gaard and the head coach, PJ Fleck. Stay with us. It is Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck from Learfield, IMG College. Welcome back. Segment 2, Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck. Mike Grimm and Justin Gaard with you here on the Gopher Radio Network. The head coach, PJ Fleck, Minnesota, getting ready for Friday night football. The Maryland Terrapins, who are 0-1, and we'll preview that game here in a moment. But Guards, you have a couple more follow-ups on the Michigan-Minnesota game from Saturday.
Well, I'm curious, how many different contingency plans or ideas did you come up with special teams-wise in terms of where you were kicking off, how you were kicking off, what you were going to do when it came to punting? Obviously, you tried the fake punt as well. I mean, what were those meetings like, and how many different things did you try to have in the hopper to get around that situation?
Well, there's a lot, and that's what makes it really difficult, right? Because they're going to adjust to what you're doing, then you have to adjust off of that. We had the squib kicks involved. We had the sky kicks involved. We have onside kicks involved. We have fake punts involved. We've got a lot of things in the arsenal right now, and you have to. You have to be based on the situation that you're in, because it's one of those things that you can either go for it or you can punt. Now, we got to get our punter better, and he's going to be better, and I know he'll be better. I got a lot of confidence in him. And will continue to have confidence in him. Certain situations create certain times that you have to make decisions that are really difficult. And sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But there's a lot in the arsenal. There needs to be.
One of the questions I got a lot after the game and since the game is there are other specialists and other kickers that were dressed and out on the field for warm-ups? Like, what are the different protocols or rules or thoughts or reasoning, even because people are confused? They say, well, these guys are out there. Are they not available? What's the deal with that? Can you lend any ideas to that with those questions?
There's some people who are coming back from their actual quarantine that have specific rules of what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. There's some people that were not at the game and not allowed to be at the game. Then there's some others that are recovering from something. Maybe somebody had an off-season surgery. Maybe somebody had something that they weren't able to play. Maybe there was things like that. So we were pretty much all hands on deck, the best we could in that particular situation. But again, yes, you're right. There's people that have the ability to do it, but to have gone into the game to do that at that particular moment, haven't done that, or they weren't available to do that.
And I know, too, in relation to that, you've assembled a little bit larger group of specialists, and I think you have at least one or two guys on the roster that if you want to just boot the thing out of the end zone, you could do that, but they were not available, correct, for Saturday?
Correct. Yeah. I mean,
that wasn't a personal choice to just leave them out. They just weren't available. Yeah.
I promise you, we exhausted every single option, guys. We faked it from our own 25-yard line or 30-yard line. Yeah. I understand people's questioning on that, but I have not done that. And since I've been here, I don't think we've done that. Have we done that? I don't think we've done that. So it's not like it's a characteristic like he does it all the time. He's a complete idiot and fool. There were reasons with that. In 28-17, we were going to give the ball back to him. The punt prior to that didn't go very far. Yes, we could have went for it too, but I felt like the fake punt, we had everything right. We just don't stay on one block. It's there, but that's football, and you have to take those chances. If we get it, I mean, we go down, score, it's 28-24. It swings back in our direction, and here we go, and who knows? But those are difficult decisions you have to make based on the personnel that we have And that's constantly changing even throughout the game, guys. That is constantly changing even throughout the game. But hopefully we get a little bit better this week.
Well, and as far as the fake punt goes, part of the reason why you pull it off is the element of surprise there. No one's probably expecting, so that can be why it could have been effective if it's executed. So from that standpoint, if you're gonna roll the dice there, I think the fake punt's the play as opposed to lining up and trying to run it because you have the element of surprise. Now, moving on to you mentioned the COVID-19 situation.
There you go, Grimm. See, yeah, element of
what's
that's
that?
the whole point of it, right? But it horrible.
Oh, of course.
I'm
well,
serious.
it's a really
bad call, guys. I take 100% accountability for that.
Yeah, but hey, like you say, if it works, then you're the smartest guy on the field, and everyone thinks it's great. So I did want to.
I've been on both sides. So to me, it is what it is. It didn't work. Our players know. The one thing I will say, the players are the one thing that matters to me, and they know that we went into that game knowing we're going to do this, and now they know we're going to call it. If we say we're going to do it, we're going to do it.
I wanted to ask you too briefly about the protocols in the Big Ten, because now we knew the protocols, you knew the protocols back when this was all announced, but now as the season starts, I think fans all of a sudden are like, whoa, hold it a second, 21 days, now that there's real games happening, and you, I mean, for a month you've been talking about the idea that, hey, look, guys, the season can flip if you get 4 or 5 of the wrong people testing positive and they're out for 3 games. And that's minimum. I mean, that if they encounter other issues, it could even be more than that. And I'm not talking specific to the Gophers. I'm saying somebody thinking they might have a 7 or 8 win season. If the wrong 4 or 5 guys test positive, that can turn into a 3 or 4 win season pretty quickly when you factor in other football injuries that are bound to happen. So what are your thoughts on the 21-day deal, which is certainly a tougher protocol per se than some of the other leagues have implemented?
Well, first of all, I think I've made this comment to a lot of people. I taught elementary education, and I got an ATLMA ACT, guys. I'm not the one they're asking about virus education, of what we need to be able to do for the student athletes. That's up to our medical professionals. What I do feel is that the Big Ten has the safest playing environment, and taking protocols to protect student athletes. It's an 8-game season with no wiggle room whatsoever. There could be games canceled, not made up. Like you said, on Friday morning, you could have people test positive, and next thing you know, they're out 21 days and 3 games, almost half the season. And then you got people complaining about targeting rules, right? That's 1 game, let alone COVID, you're out 3 games. Symptomatic or asymptomatic, doesn't matter. The PCR test after the daily test is there to be able to verify that test. If there's any indiscrepancies in that, they go back and start over. But again, that person has to be out at least a day. Then they continue to go on and go on and go on until they actually have a positive or a negative, and it's backed up by both tests. So it's the best medical procedure you can have and protocols to be able to make sure that you have a playing field that is COVID-free, the best we possibly can. And I think our players appreciate that. If you think back 3-4 months ago, the question from the players it wasn't we want to play yet. It was, how are you going to keep us safe? We're not going to play. How are you going to keep us safe? How are you going to keep us safe? Then the season gets canceled. Then everybody wants to play, right? And that's fine. But now it's the system's in place. The protocols are in place. It's 21 days, and that's hard, but it's the right thing if it keeps the players safe.
Yeah, and certainly the extra week, I guess, in there is the heart situation, right? They want to make sure they got the heart monitored to make sure there's no infection and that myocarditis, which is certainly a scary thing. And I understand why those in charge of the safety of people are saying, look, we want to make sure that everything is good before that young man gets back on the football field.
Yeah, and that's what everybody should want. We want to make sure that these young people are taken care of and every one of their questions are answered, and not just to get back on the field, but to make sure that they can live a strong, healthy, long life after football. I think that's what we all want from them. And I think this is what makes 2020 very unique, everybody. It's only started. Remember we talked about this roller coaster, right? We talked about the actual really loop-de-loop ones at Great America and in Disney World, not just a little kiddie land. Like, we have just gone up and just went over, like, we're just going like this, just down the first drop. We haven't even got into the other stuff. We're only 1 game into this thing, but that's what makes it a pretty wild ride.
I know he's from Chicago when he references Great America
That's
as
right.
the amusement park of note. No doubt about that.
Ernie Mills.
Yeah, no doubt. If you're from Minnesota, it's Valley Fair. If you're from where I'm at, it's Adventureland and, of course, Disneyland. And Gargi, he just traveled the country on his private jet going to whatever amusement park he wanted.
Wherever I needed to be that afternoon, baby.
No doubt. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll come back. We'll look ahead to Maryland, and we have more to talk about, so stay with us. It's Gopher Football Weekly. It's sponsored by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Minnesota, the #1 health plan for Medicare in the state. This is Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck from Learfield, IMG College. Welcome back. It's Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck, Mike Grimm, and Justin Gaard with you here on the Gopher Radio Network. Minnesota is 0-1. Maryland is 0-1, and both teams looking for win #1 this Friday night. It's a 6:30 kickoff. We'll take air at 4:30 from College Park, Maryland. And Coach, let's look ahead to the Terps. They had a rough night Saturday, losing in Evanston at the count of 43-3. What did you see from that game film, and what can you tell us about the roster that Coach Mike Locksley is putting out on the field?
Well, part of the reason was that, they turned the ball over 3 times. Anytime you do that, it's going to be hard, especially against a Pat Fitzgerald football team. So it would have been interesting to see if they didn't turn the ball over, what would have happened. They've got skill all over the field on offense. They got really good receivers. To his brother is at the quarterback position. They've got a lot of guys back on the defensive side of the ball, a lot of transfers that have come in and really filled a lot of holes that they've had. Big, strong athletes everywhere. Some linebackers that have played some football are back. The back end's really athletic. They can all run. So, again, it's another challenge for us. It's 2020. Anybody can beat anybody on any given Saturday or Friday or whenever it is. We've got to get ourselves prepared. We've got to be better than we were last week. We know that. Our players have responded to that already. And, again, I know they can't wait to get back on the field.
I think it was 39 freshmen. They've got 18 transfers. Coach Locksley stealing your material too, Coach. Not only did he do year 0 for last year, he's calling this 0.5, year 0.5, because he's got all those new guys. So maybe you can mix that in at some point in your career. But when you're dealing with all those new people, obviously, his challenges with it. But when you're trying to figure out where all these pieces are with just one game, what are the difficulties there?
Yeah, they're playing a lot of players right now. They're rotating in a lot of people, right? So it's not even like everybody keeps asking in 20, who's starting, who's doing this, who's doing that. It's hard to give a starting depth chart. It is. It's pointless. Everybody's always asking, you got a depth chart? Why isn't your depth chart out? It's pointless in 2020. It changes every single day. And same thing with Maryland. They're rotating so many people in there every single play, right? And again, they're getting a lot of people experience who are very good players. And they need that type of experience, just like our young guys do too.
Friday night game, as we talk here on Tuesday for the Coaches Show, what's the week like? One, it's a shortened week already, but 2, you'll have a travel day, which maybe, cuts a little bit of the time. Both you guys played on a Saturday night, so from that standpoint, it's the same. But what's the challenge of what lies ahead that way?
Most coaches get the most sleep on the plane. I think that's the biggest challenge when you have a short week, right? Especially a Saturday night game going into a short week. Sunday's your day to game plan, but also put Michigan to bed. And then by Monday today, we're already practicing for Maryland. So the first and second down game plan had to be done by today. So you're talking about a lot of hours put into that and a lot of rest and recovery from our players, taking care of their bodies, hydrating, eating, sleeping the right way, and making sure they're taking advantage of their naps, and also making sure they get after it school-wise too.
Offensively, they want to be explosive. I think Locksley even told the TV crew this past week that they want to take a shot down the field if they can. If he had it every 7th play or so, when you're going up against an offense that is always trying to be that aggressive, what's important as you're trying to prepare your defense for something like that?
Well, it's making sure that you're on your person and you're on your responsibility all the time, from the start of the play to the end of the whistle. And they've taken a lot of shots down the field. They did that against Northwestern. Completed some, didn't complete some others, but they're not afraid to take shots down the field and stretch the field vertically.
The last trip you guys were down there, it was they had all those talented running backs and had some long runs. And at that point, you were playing with some younger guys, a little like you are now. Do you pull anything from that game? I know you probably want to erase some of that game from your mind, but from a standpoint of making sure how important those fits are, that was, I think, the big buzzword from Saturday night was fits and, making tackles when you have a chance to make a tackle.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much we'll pull back from that, based on what Coach Locksley has done and his system and what they've done. We're going to focus on that. and we've embraced our past to create our future. I mean, Jordan Howden had to be able to embrace his past to create his future. Now he's one of our best players. Some of these young players are going to have to keep failing to succeed. It's the only way they're going to get better. And this year, the way the year is, it's a perfect opportunity for those guys to be able to get in there and earn a free year and be able to continue to get better, because we have to get better. But the only way you get better is you got to go play.
We haven't talked a lot about your offense from Saturday night that you can move forward with. Obviously you had the strip sack, which wasn't helpful, and then later in the game there were a bunch of sacks when the game was kind of out of hand and they knew you were going to throw. In between, Coach, I got to be honest, I was pleasantly surprised how well you ran the ball against Michigan. I thought Mo had a great night. You obviously found different ways to get Rashad the ball. What did you take from your offense on Saturday night?
We just had to be able to finish. We had to be able to finish drives. I think that was the biggest thing that we saw. We made a penalty inside the 5, which is really uncharacteristic of our football team. But we got to be able to finish the drives and get it done. But I was really pleased with how we were able to, against, I think, one of the best defensive fronts in the country. We're able to establish a new line of scrimmage, run the football effectively, set up some play-action pass. We were able to sustain drives. But, again, the finishing part we need to be able to do.
And you had told us, in the weeks leading up to the opener that, hey, look, guys, this is a different team. It's a different team than last year. It's some different guys. And there were some different formations where a year ago you used a lot of 3 receiver sets. It looked like mostly the other night it was double tights on one side and 2 receivers on the other, and it worked. You had Keith with a touchdown and a couple of big catches, and obviously Bateman had 100 yards. So it does look a little bit different, and maybe that evolves as the season goes on, but at least in week 1, as you mentioned, there was some differences from a year ago.
Well, there's definitely going to be differences, especially as you continue to go through the years and look at, we're recruiting to our system and what we do. However, there's also some guys that have really come along and developed inside the program that can help us expand where we've been. And I think that's what Mike Sanford has done. He's brought in a little bit more of an expansion to help get other people involved as well. Matt Simon's added that as well. So we're excited about where the offense is headed. Again, it's not the same offense. It's similar. It's not the same, but it's similar. And we've got to continue to do everything we can to master it.
What did you see from Trey Potts and Cam Wiley?
I think they're really 2 talented running backs that Gopher fans should be really excited about for the future. Obviously, Mo carrying it 26 times. He's going to have the load this year, and we want him to. He's one of the best backs in the country, in my opinion. So hard to bring down, so agile, so tough, lightning quick. And then you throw in Cam Wiley and Trey Potts, who are both very different backs. Right. You've got Cam Wiley, who's a kind of a taller, leaner thrasher. I mean, he can run outside zone and get him in space and come downhill immediately. Kind of reminds you of those tall USC backs back in the day. He runs a little bit like an Eric Dickerson, a little bit upright. We got to get his pads down a little bit more, but he can really play. And he's only a redshirt freshman. Played a little bit last year and then got hurt. And then Trey Potts, a guy who's a little bit more running style like Rodney Smith. If our Gopher fans remember Rodney, which I'm sure they all do, he's a little bit more running style like that. But I think we got really 3 really good tailbacks that are going to have to be able to, 2 of them are going to have to grow up, and they're going to have to be able to grow up as they play. But that's part of this year as well, as we continue to go into this year, and not only this year, but go into 2021. And once we get Bryce Williams back, we'll be able to add him to the mix as well.
It also seemed like you're making Mo Ibrahim a fullback in some scenarios when you had one of those other guys. He had a couple of nice blocks there, and he's obviously done a really good job in blitz pickup and pass protection as well. How good of a blocker is Mo, and how do you hope to utilize that?
He's one of the best pass pro backs I've ever been around, NFL and college. And he's so tough. He's got great initial leverage, right? Just because he's not the tallest guy.
Right.
But his technique is flawless. Kenny Burns does a really good job of developing our running back, especially in the protection game. And the techniques of pass pro, the angles of pass pro, which are critical. And they usually have to take a linebacker running full speed head on from a stationary position. And to do that's tough. That's not easy to do. But really proud of the progress he's making in that, and just got to keep improving.
I wanted to ask you too, Coach, about the start of the game where you got the block punt. Preston Jellin got in there. Was that something you saw, or did it just happen to spring like that, or was that a punt block call?
No, it's a punt block call. I think, Coach Wenger does a really good job of dialing things up. We knew we'd have to be able to make up for it in special teams somehow, some way. We had to rely heavily on specialists and special teams, which sounds crazy because we didn't really have many of them, but we had to create it differently in different ways, whether it was sky punts or squibs or block kicks. we had to do things that maybe were a little bit outside of what we normally do just to be able to get through the game and give us the best chance to win.
Yeah,
you mentioned – go ahead, Grimmer.
I was going to say, he got off to the great start and then punched it in with the Keefe touchdown, and it's 7-zip. And things were good. And then unfortunately, the big play and all of a sudden it's back to even. But it kind of, it was fun to see that fast start and the special teams have an impact early.
Absolutely. We're going to need everybody. Somehow, some way, it's going to take this whole football team, offensively, defensively, special teams, every single person doing their part, rowing the boat together, same direction, same speed, same efficiency. So if you're not a starter, just wait 2 minutes. You might end up being one. So that's just the way it is in 2020.
You mentioned a couple of times some protection issues with the offense. Is that stuff pre-snap? Is that Tanner getting you in the right stuff? Is that the offensive line, or is it a combination of all of it?
No, we put a lot on our quarterback. We do, and again, one of them's completely my fault. But again, there's others that I should have put him in that position, and then there's others that I think the sacks when we were in 6-man protection, just getting into almost like a 2-minute mode, that they did some things that was pretty good. So that they were able to get to us. So, but for the most part, we've got to lower our center of gravity. We've got to be able to sit down a little bit more. But those guys were so good; they did a great job. And it's first game, and like I said, 40% of what you kind of think 60% of what you don't know. Then you adjust to the game, then you adjust to that. You don't see that thing again. You see something else. So I mean, you got to give Michigan credit and Don Brown. I mean, they did a great job getting to Tanner. But the 1-sack fumble, I mean, that's the big turning point in the game, in my opinion. And that was so early that was unfortunate. And then not being able to get a touchdown to match it and only a field goal, right. And then them getting a touchdown on a short field. And then a kick return. There was a lot of things that just we had to play catch up pretty quick.
All right, let's take our final break. We'll have our final segment when we come back. Stay with us. It's Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck from Learfield, IMG College. Welcome back. Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck, Mike Grimm, and Justin Gaard with you. Our final segment here on the Gopher Radio Network. It is Friday night, Minnesota and Maryland, 6:30. The kickoff will take air at 4:30. And if you missed any portion of today's Coaches Show, you can always catch it on demand via our Golden Gopher podcast. Download and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. So College Game Day was in town, Coach, for the second straight game. I know you made a visit in person. They had a really nice feature on Rashad Bateman, and I think people just are enjoying that part of what you have brought to the program. What kind of feedback have you been getting about that from Saturday?
Well, we've got to find a way to win the games when game day comes here. I think that's the next step that we need to be able to do. But I think it just shows where our program's headed, and the recruiting that we're having. The brand that people know nationally about the University of Minnesota, about the row the boat culture, about the city, the Twin Cities area, our response as a city, as a state. I think it was really healthy. We spent the last 6 months in finding a way to be divided. College Game Day is something really good about college football that brings so many people together. Now, can't have it live, but it brought so many people together, again, highlighting the University of Minnesota, the Minneapolis, St. Paul, Twin City area, and then the state of Minnesota. I mean, you're talking about national exposure. I mean, that not only helps us as a football program in recruiting, but that also helps the enrollment for our student body. That helps our university in general, which inevitably helps our state, brings national exposure, how fun a place this really is, the 18 Fortune 500 companies. I can go on and on. I mean, there's so much exposure that College Game Day, who's the #1 show watched in college football, I think that's critical to be able to have those. And to bring it twice in 3.5 years, I think it's just a feather in our university's cap, and we should all be very proud. I know I'm to blame for the losses on game day, but it's really about the experience for everybody else. The game's up to us, and just haven't done my job up to that point yet.
And you're bringing snow every time. I heard that. Back in Kalamazoo, it was snowy. You got snow. I'm thinking maybe the Ohio State game next year, like that first weekend, it might be nice enough weather to bring them back and say, hey, it's actually pretty nice here every once in a while. Desmond, who just hates the cold, which I think is the most hilarious part of the whole show.
Yeah, I think he kind of like blows that a little bit out of proportion at times. He's over there. I told him the other day, I said, hey, Desmond, you're hurting my recruiting over there. He's got earmuffs. He's like this. He's like, it's dropping,
Yeah.
And
he kept talking about nice. Layers that he was adding as the show went on. It's like, you played at Michigan, dude. You were playing in Miami.
your blood thins out after a while, you know, if
I
you're
guess.
not there. But I thought it was really a pleasant night, to be honest with you. When the wind's not blowing, it's
Agreed.
4 miles an hour. I thought it was very pleasant. Everybody could, you know, I thought it was very comfortable, to be honest with you. But yeah, I mean, everywhere I've ever had college game day where I've been, whether a player, when I was Northern Illinois versus Bowling Green, when both teams were undefeated, it was snowing there too. So you're talking about 4 times I've been around it. It snowed, and I apologize if it's me. I can almost guarantee, can't guarantee here in the state of Minnesota that we might not get a snow flurry here in August once in a while. You never know.
Yeah, get one of those early season visits, that's for sure. Another thing that's good for the program and good for exposure and good for recruiting, I would assume, is the idea of having guys that are making an impact in the NFL. And on Sunday, you had Kamal Martin making his first start, and I believe Pro Football Focus or one of those independent evaluators said that he was the best rookie defensive player in the league on Sunday based on their ratings. You had Antoine Winfield getting an interception. And then, of course, Tyler Johnson, who's been catching passes from Tom Brady, catches the touchdown pass that puts Tom Brady #1 all-time in touchdowns. So that's pretty neat stuff.
Do you give the ball back, or do you, like, stuff it under your jersey? You know, you keep that one, you sell that one back, do you give it to your teammate? I'm not sure what Tyler did, you know what I mean? So we'll find out. But it's so beneficial to have our guys succeeding in the National Football League, and that's the one thing. They're all having a lot of success right now. Antoine, who might be the Rookie of the Year defensively in the National Football League, just continues to play the game the right way with a big smile on his face. He got so much better when he was here, and we're just so thankful we got a chance to coach him. Really special player. Tyler's getting better with every single week as he continues to gain more and more trust from his quarterback, Tom Brady. Kamal finally got a chance to play. We can go on and on. Our players, we weren't allowed to have a captain's breakfast because of COVID. We usually have a former Gopher come in and really address the football team on the breakfast of the game on Saturday morning. And so Garrett Chernoff and our recruiting department put together kind of a compilation of all of our players who are in the NFL of a message to our team, which was really neat. There was about 6 or 7 of them, including Blake Cashman, including Ryan Santoso. It was so good to see him on there with his mustache. And it was really good for our players to see those guys address them.
What was it like coaching and playing, you know, with the crowd, you know, 500 people or whatever? You've obviously prepared for it. You practiced over in the stadium a lot. I told people I didn't really notice it unless I took my headset off, and then I could tell, okay, it's a little quieter in here and things like that. But just playing in that environment, what was different about it?
You know, the game's the game. I think when you're a player or a coach, you're really so focused on the game. But I will say, it's like in between, like TV timeouts, that was a little eerily quiet at times. When you run out of the tunnel, you can hear it, but you don't see it. It's the times that you notice and see the crowd that it was a little bit awkward and a little bit different. And then the smells of game day, you know, those brats, those hot dogs, those burgers, right? The chili, all of the different people tailgating, the drive up to the stadium with the tailgating. We miss our fans dearly. We really do. Can't wait for COVID to find a way to be out of our everyday, our daily lives, so we can get our fans back in the stands at somehow, whether it's this year or next year, because we do miss you. And not that we didn't notice you weren't there. We noticed you weren't there, but Mike Grimm and his whole staff did a great job of creating a game day-like atmosphere where you didn't notice when you were playing that much because the sounds were just like they were. The scoreboard was similar to what it is during a game. The sights and sounds were very similar to a game day, just maybe not as loud.
Travel now, this will be your first road game of the season. So one, you're going to have some freshmen that have never traveled before, and I know you usually try to educate them. But in this regard, how much different too is it in the sense of with the coronavirus out there and trying to stay bubbled? I know you guys, fly privately anyway, but and trying to stay bubbled in a hotel. How are team meals going to work? I mean, you're all tested all week. How has that or will that change for this week?
The way you eat meals is completely different than how we've done that in the past. How they get their food is different than we've done in the past. Every state has completely different state guidelines that you have to follow. There's times they might have to get their lunch, dinner, and breakfast in a box and have it as a box meal. There's others that you can have a buffet. There's got to be people serving the buffet to our players. The way they're seating in team meetings, position meetings, how they eat meals is very different. How you travel on an airplane is a little bit different. The traveling party is very different of how many people you're taking. Do you bus certain people to the game prior to the game and then fly other people on different times? So there's a lot of, the security's a little bit heavier. The process leading up to that with testing is a little bit different. So there's a lot of changes. But again, that's 2020, and you got to be ready to adapt to change.
All right, well, let's change your best, Coach, and we'll get a win on Friday night in Maryland.
You got to appreciate your time, everybody. Row the boat, Sky Ma, go Gophers.
All right, sounds good. He's the head coach. For Justin Gaard, I'm Mike Grimm, and this has been Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck from Learfield, IMG College.